Eye-opener. Things that just don't seem to add up. How does killing off an entire generation of young Ukrainian men equate to saving Ukraine? Ukraine has wiped out its ability to procreate within a generational time frame. While the actual number of Ukrainian soldiers who have died in the conflict is not known, the average age of the Ukrainian soldier being 43 suggests a shortfall of younger volunteers. While this may mean that younger Ukrainians are cowards who refuse to fight, the videos that show young Ukrainian men being rounded up suggest that young Ukrainians are being forced to fight whether they want to or not. Given that the average age of the Ukrainian soldiers is so high, it would appear that Ukraine's conscription of unwilling participants is either not garnering enough young men to lower the average age of soldiers in Ukraine, or that they are running out of young men for their draft. When coupled with the fact that on October 1st, 2023, Ukraine introduced a new law to conscript women, it looks more like Ukraine is running out of men for the war effort. Now, if this doesn't convince you that the narrative that suggests Ukraine is winning may not be completely accurate, then how about the allegations that Ukraine requested other countries to extradite Ukrainian refugees back to Ukraine? This request was made after Ukrainian refugees refused Ukraine's request for them to return on their own. And how does Zelensky justify his people sacrificing themselves when representatives from Ukraine's biggest ally, America, say Ukraine will fight Russia to the last Ukrainian? That sounds more like a prediction than a rally cry. What if Lindsey Graham stood before his soldiers and used the following as his battle cry? Let's all face our doom and die to save our country, or how about this? Let's forfeit our lives to save our country for international corporations to buy it on the cheap. I can't imagine that a country with no citizens is a country worth saving, or even a country at all. This holds true because a country only exists if there are people who believe in it. According to Lindsey Graham, however, Ukrainians should be willing to sacrifice themselves to the very last of them for America, because Ukraine will soon no longer exist. Then there is Israel, a country that has killed 40,000 people in retaliation for Hamas killing 1,300 Israelis. Even though Israel killed a lot of its own citizens on October 7th because of the Hannibal Directive. For those who don't know, the Hannibal Directive mandates that Israeli military kill Israelis who might be taken hostage by their enemies. So, not only is Israel's retaliation disproportionate, but no one seems to realize this discrepancy. While they do point out that Israel has killed Palestinians to get to Hamas, they never point out that Israel has killed more than 3 times as many Palestinians, including women and children. Now Israel has bombed Lebanon, Iran, Yemen, Syria, but they claim to be doing all of this in self-defense. Please look into the modern history of the conflicts between Israel and its neighbors to determine who is the aggressor. Also, look into the USS Liberty, an American Navy ship that Israel attacked under a false flag operation to draw America into their war. Then look into the fact that the Israeli economy is better than the American economy, and the fact that Israel provides universal healthcare for its people, while America lets more of its people go homeless and suffer from chronic illnesses that result from over-processed food that lacks nourishment. This should provide insight into how American leaders truly feel about those they promise to serve. Moving on. As far as things that don't add up, let's consider inflation and scarcity in America. Inflation is caused primarily by an overabundance of currency circulating through an economy. In the past few years in America, the inflation experienced has been due to the $5 trillion that was printed during the COVID pandemic. If that money had been distributed judiciously and equitably, the cost increases that hit America in the past couple years would not have been so dramatic. Every American would have more money, so inflation would have impacted every American equally. Giving $2 trillion, at most, to the masses and $3 trillion to a small minority, however, caused inflation to hit the middle class and the poor much more drastically. I've shown how this imbalance played out and how it caused problems for so many in other posts, so there is no need to discuss that aspect of inflation here. Instead, I will point out how scarcity can also cause inflation. Basically, it comes down to the law of supply and demand. If you have an excess of a product or service, the demand is not as high. As an example, consider the price of a giant flat-screen television. When the supply of such an item is low, as in when they first hit the market, those televisions were going for thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars. Now you can buy a pretty big one for under $1,000. The limited quantity causes the price to go up. This is what has impacted almost everything in America's economy. During the COVID lockdowns, the supply chain was broken and goods became more scarce. Just look at how many people hoarded toilet paper a few years back. An easy fix for any shortage of toilet paper would be to purchase a $40 bidet. Even if the power goes out, there's a way to get that fresh, clean feeling down there with a bidet, but that's a totally different post. The point here is that just the perception of not being able to get toilet paper made people buy it in excess. So much so that retailers had to limit the number of rolls of toilet paper one could purchase. This created a scarcity that also contributed to the price of toilet paper and almost everything being inflated. In the past few years, the price of houses have risen at least 50%, while the cost of a car or truck is now what one could pay for a house a little more than a decade ago. Though inflation never exceeded 10%, prices have increased 20, 30, 50, 100, 200%. Either inflation only hit 10%, as American leaders say it did, or it hit way higher than that. If you've got a year-old grocery receipt, compare it to your last grocery receipt. I bet there's a much bigger difference than 10%. Why is there such a difference? Is America producing so much less, or are those who control the resources we all need to survive creating an artificial scarcity? You know, like the artificial scarcity that oil-producing countries created, so gas prices would skyrocketed in the 1970s. If you are too young to remember, the OPEC nations stopped supplying oil, which made gas more scarce. The oil was available, but those who controlled it hoarded it, making it more scarce than it actually was. Maybe the same thing is happening now, but instead of being limited to oil, everything is being withheld by those who control everything. People need to wake up to the ways in which their lives are being manipulated and controlled. America is evolving into some kind of neo-feudalism where a small group of people control and own everything you need to survive. Maybe this is what people like Klaus Schwab of the World Economic Forum mean when they say you will own nothing and be happy. Look it up. This is one of their slogans, and notice how they say, you will own nothing, not we will own nothing. Chris Osman has been warning about such things and wrote a book on how to decipher what their words actually mean and how to compare what they say to the real world in which you and your loved ones live. In 2018, Chris Osman wrote a book highlighting the problems humanity would face if more power, wealth, and control were funneled to a small cohort of individuals, groups, or organizations. In that book, Mr. Osman provided solutions, from himself and others, to the inevitable problems we would all face. In it, he also provided a means for the public to analyze, compare, and contrast the words and deeds of those we've chosen to follow against our real-world experiences. To this end, Mr. Osman provides the means for readers to disseminate information as provided by their news sources of choice, their elected officials, and any other authority they choose to follow. The book, titled Solutions, Enough Complaining, Let's Fix America, offers a means to hold leaders up to not just a higher standard than is currently accepted, but one that will improve lives. Make things add up. Click the link below and get your copy today.